Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Wednesday. It's Daryl here. It is bright and freaking early, man. It's 3 a.m. on the dot here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, this morning I came across an article about Charlie Sheen, actually about Charlie Sheen's neighbor, and I wanted to see where he was at. I hadn't heard about him in a long time. I feel kind of connected to Charlie Sheen. I'm almost the same exact age as him. I think he's about 5 months older than me. I've heard this, I don't know, probably about a dozen times in my life. I've had people say, hey, dude, you look a lot. Did anybody ever tell you look like Charlie Sheen? I've had people tell me I look like Christian Bale, too, before. Right now, I don't think he can see it right now in this light or anything. But anyway, I've been compared to Charlie Sheen, and the life he led, I see myself in that. And so I came across this article. Let me tell you about what just happened recently. His neighbor was arrested. This is a bizarre story. Her name is, I think it's a her. I don't know. Electra Schrock. Electra Schrock. I don't know if this person changed their name to that, or if this person's parents had a sense of humor, like their last name was Schrock, and they had a sense of humor and decided to name their kid Electra. I don't know if that's like an in thing in California or what, or in Hollywood. Excuse me, not California. Okay, so this person has put sticky substance on Charlie Sheen's car, and actually knocked on Charlie Sheen's door not too long ago. And when he opened the door, he or she, I assume it's a she, came charging in and grabbed him by the neck. And she was arrested I believe she was arrested for assault. I'm really not too concerned about this story. But so when this popped up in the news, like I said, I feel kind of a connection to him. And I've been wondering about him, because the last I saw of Charlie Sheen, it was just so sad. It was back in 2015. I'm sure you guys all remember this. He was the highest paid actor on TV of the Sheen acting dynasty. And with the movie, was it Major League under his belt, and all sorts of great movies and everything. And he just went down the down the crapper, man. Last I remember, I got this picture in my head where he was sitting in a home theater, like one of those small, expensive, like mansion home theaters in Hollywood, with a couple adult film stars. Bragging about the amount of rock cocaine he smokes or snorts every day. Seriously, that's the image I still have in my head. I believe that was him. And how he has tiger blood, and how he's a freaking alien from Mars, and how Chuck Lorre, his boss, and his best friend at the time, the guy that created 2.5 Men, he called him a turd on a live broadcast, I believe. And he got fired from his number one spot on 2.5 Men. And he just kind of swirled the drain right there. And that was the last I had ever heard of Charlie Sheen. And I am glad to say, man, I am so psyched. He's coming. He just recently did an interview on December 7th. And I'll have the link right down below for that. So it's kind of ironic that this is all, I guess it's all popping up right. Also, he is getting back together with Chuck Lorre. And he's doing a movie on HBO Max called How to Be a Bookie. So he's kind of making a comeback. And I was reading, the links will be down below. So once again, this perfectly, I could see myself in his addiction, and I could see myself in his recovery. And this is the comforting thing about being in recovery, how similar we all are. And that's like in yesterday's video, I talked about this. One of the best ways to get over an addiction is to get into one of these groups, because then you realize you're not alone, you're not a freak, you're not a mutant, there's not something wrong with you, there's something, it's a disease, whether you're addicted to gambling, sex, drugs, alcohol, or whatever. Addiction is a disease, and there's thousands of other people that are exactly like you, doing the exact same things, saying the exact same stupid things, and doing the exact same harmful stuff to themselves, and it's amazing. It's just so in this interview he talks about now what his day is like, And once again, it's I see myself in the day. He says he gets up at like 4:30 in the morning, like before he would still be up drinking and using, which is me to a T. Right now, I would still be up. I would have still been up from last night using, crumbing on the floor, looking for remnants of rock cocaine. That's honestly what I would be doing right now, 14 years ago, or I'm sorry, 17 years ago. I've been clean and sober since October 23rd, 2006. For those of you that don't remember it from yesterday's video. So now he says his day is mostly single dad stuff. And, you know, he loves it. He says he gets up at 4:30. He exercises, which I do compulsive. I'm obsessive compulsive about exercising. And then he watches the news, which is kind of coincidental because that's the first thing I do to make this video. I go through all the news stories. I tell you guys that. It's so identical. And it reminded me of something. Like before, how both of his all addicts, like mine, his all addicts, our lives used to be chaos. And now we find so much comfort in them being regulated, them being like scheduled to a daily schedule that we can depend on. And it's amazing. I remember this morning. I remember sitting back when I was a truck driver, right before I got fired. I came up positive for a cocaine test, and my boss would go out with me maybe once a year, once or twice a year, to kind of review my stops and everything. Like I would do sales, paperback book sales, and I would drive on routes into New York City and Westchester County, and Connecticut, and the Gold Coast, Westport, Connecticut, and all that. And once or twice a year, he would go out with me. And I was using heavily at the time. I'd go into work. Most days I went into work and drove a truck. I hadn't gone to sleep from the night before, which was stupid and dangerous. But he would go out with me every so often, and we would be together for the day. And my life was total chaos. Even though I was driving a truck, shortly after that, I got fired for a positive urinalysis. I came back positive. I'd been up all night, and they said, "Oh, you got a random this morning," and I knew it was all over. I didn't even bother lying. I admitted everything, and I got fired right on the spot. 7-year job, Teamster job, excellent pay, and I got fired. Well, I had to walk home. I didn't even have a car at the time. It sucked. Anyway, we're sitting in the truck, and I watch my boss throughout the day. And his day is so regulated. It used to drive me crazy. I used to look at him and I'm like, oh my God, I'd rather open a vein than live that life, you know, because my life was so chaotic. I wouldn't eat. Some days I would eat. Some days I wouldn't eat. Most days I wouldn't eat. I would just use, like after I got off work. But he would open up his thermos. I remember this. He'd have a thermos in precisely at 11:30 on the dot. He would open up his thermos. He would set something over here. He would open up his food. He'd have a bite of this. He'd have a drink. You know, I mean, it drove me insane. I would watch him, like on these days that we were together. And I'm like, oh my God, how can he live like this? You know, how can he live this? You know, he does this day after day at the exact same time. And I was like, oh my, you know, I used to make fun of him. I hated it. And now I find so much comfort. And I love living like this. I couldn't imagine going back to the chaos that was my life. You know, I've become that person, but I loved just the organization of having having a plan for my next day and where I want to be tomorrow, where I want to be next week, where I want to be next month. I love the feeling of that now. Anyway, he's doing good. I looked this up about Charlie Sheen's HIV, what's going on with that. And this, I don't know much about HIV. Luckily, I got tested a few times when I got clean and sober. And I came back negative for everything. You know, tuberculosis, Hep B, Hep C, all that stuff. I came back, I don't know how, but I came back negative on everything. And he doesn't talk much about, I guess he's living okay with HIV. He talks about the moment, you know, and we all remember this, the moment when we just had enough. And he had quit drugs initially, and he was still drinking. He said he loved to drink every morning. You know, he'd have scotch in his coffee. And he talks about this one particular morning where he was already hammered. By the time he had to drive his daughter, he had to drive his two daughters, Sammy, 19, and Lola, 18. Well, I suppose that's their ages now. This is back then when they were probably like 13 or so. And he had to drive them somewhere, or drive one of them somewhere, and he was too hammered to drive. So at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and they had he had his friend Tony drive them, and he saw his daughter in the back seat, her expression on her face, and and that how she was her dad is already hammered at 8 in the morning, and that was the day he quit drinking. I get goosebumps, man. And I talk about that one night that I was waiting to give a dealer, a guy I didn't even know, because I couldn't get a hold of my regular dealers. I was down to my last $20 in change, in rolled change that I had managed to scrape together. I had gone through hundreds of dollars that day. This was October 23rd, 2006, the last day I ever used. And it was in a dark parking lot. And I kept calling this guy on the payphone. I didn't have a cell phone in 2006. So I had to keep getting out of the car and calling him. And it was a cold night here in Connecticut on October 23rd. It was unusually cold. And I had to turn my car off because I didn't want the cops to see me or anything. And I'm sitting in a dark parking lot, and I'm watching people walk in and out of the stores, shopping. I think it was for Halloween was coming up, families and everything. And I'm sitting, I sat in that car for like 3 hours, and I thought about that. I'm sitting here, I'm waiting to give somebody I don't even know the last money I have on this earth, the last change. We're talking pennies, nickels, dimes, not even $20 worth. And if I had gotten something for that, because I had been using all day, that would have got me high for not even 5 minutes, and then I would have crashed even harder after that. So I was basically waiting to give somebody I didn't even know $20 to make myself feel even worse. To give somebody I didn't even know the last change I had on this earth, to make myself feel even worse than I did. And I asked myself, why am I doing all alone in that parking lot for hours, calling this guy back again? And he'd say, I'll be right there. So I kept waiting, for like 3 hours in this cold, dark parking lot with the car off, just sitting there, waiting. And that was the moment. That was it. That was like, why am I possibly doing this to myself? Anyway, I'll talk more about this in the future. I love talking about these rock stars or actors or whatever, because there's so much in common. He's a man just like me, the same age. I never had kids, and now at the age I'm at, I'll see commercials on TV of like a little girl, like I saw the Children's Hospital commercial on, and there's a little girl that is just so freaking adorable. It melts my heart. And I almost, because they say that we're emotionally stunted. And when I start using, they say you stop growing emotionally. And I believe that now. And now that I've stopped using, it's like I continued my emotional growth. Like I'm stunted. Like this is, like I'm only like 30 years old emotionally, or 35 years old emotionally, because all the time I lost using. And I kind of believe that now, because I see these, like a little girl, a little boy, and I get this feeling like, oh my God, I would protect that kid. I would love that kid, and I start getting this feeling like having kids. But unfortunately, I'm 58 years old. I'm kind of glad, honestly, that I didn't ruin somebody's life and have a child back when I was using. That's one thing I could say. And another thing that I'm proud of is I protected my family. I have a younger sister, and I used to have parties that my sister would attend, and she drank. She quit drinking now, or she still drinks socially. She never used. And I told everybody, because I used to deal and people would come to my parties and everything. I said, if I ever catch anybody giving my sister anything, you will stop living in this apartment, in this house that night. That will be the end of you. And people believe that. And it's, and my family remembers that. Like my mother remembers me, my sister telling her, and how I looked out for her, how I would never let anybody give her anything, even though, because I knew it was ruining my life even back then. And so I did do there's a couple, one or two things that I could actually be proud of from those years, those 2 decades that I used. All right, the links will be down below. Charlie Sheen doing good, making a comeback. 6 years clean and sober in January. Good job. Recovery is possible, man. It is the best freaking life. Charlie Sheen says it too. Like if you read these articles down below, and he says, you know, it's the best life he could ever imagine. He could never imagine his life could be so enjoyable just doing single dad stuff, as he puts it. All right, recovery is possible. I'll be back later with another video. You guys have a good Wednesday.